Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Prem Roundup. Today we're going over a controversial weekend in the Premier League. As always, leave a like and a comment, let me know your thoughts on this past weekend in the Premier League, and don't forget to subscribe for a roundup after every weekend in the Premier League. And with that, let's jump into the biggest storyline from this past weekend, Arsenal 2, Manchester City 2. Now, I've been open on this channel multiple times that I am an Arsenal fan, but I try to stay as unbiased as I can. Obviously, some biases will creep in, but that's just how it goes. The first thing I want to say is that I wish we could have seen this game played out 11v11 for 90 minutes. I thought it was shaping up to be an instant classic. It was much more open than either matchup that we had last year, and I think it shows that Arsenal are getting closer to City's level, especially considering they're playing without Martin Odegaard, who is their captain and one of their main leaders for their press and for their attack. The way City carved Arsenal out for their opening goal was beautiful. Calafiori was being too aggressive, and it opened up the space for Haaland to make a fantastic run to stay onside, and the finish was just incredible. It really had me thinking it was going to be a long day for Arsenal, but they responded, and they grew into the game. I didn't see much wrong with Arsenal's opening goal. Whether or not Calafiori meant for that to be a shot and not a cross doesn't matter. It was an incredible finish. The free kick that the goal came from, I can see why City fans and players would be upset by that, but I think Kyle Walker has to do a better job of just getting back into position once he's done talking to the referee. And then the corner routine from Arsenal was perfect, and they really should have had two goals from that same routine, with Gabriel hitting over the goal on the first one that they had, but then him getting the goal on the second one. And then just as we're about to go to halftime, Trossard puts a shoulder into Bernardo Silva's back, going for the ball, and then kicks the ball after the whistle is blown and gets shown a second yellow card and is sent off. Now, to me, personally, this second yellow is significantly worse than the one that Declan Rice got in the Brighton game, for one really big reason to me, and that's the timing of the kick to quote-unquote delay a restart. I believe it was Sky Sports timed from when the whistle was blown to when Trossard kicked the ball, and it was 0.84 seconds. To me, that's just a ridiculous expectation for a player to have that sort of reaction time to a whistle in a stadium that actually had some atmosphere for once. You know, part of this is still on Arsenal players. They need to be smarter in situations like that, but for that to be the reason why you're sending him off, to me feels ridiculous, especially when you compare it to the Declan Rice one from a couple weeks ago, where yeah, there was the foul committed, very clearly committed, and then the ball is thrown. There's a couple seconds between Rice committing the foul and kicking the ball. That one I get more than this one. With that being said, I can also understand the frustration from the player's side, as a lot of the time it doesn't feel that they're being refereed to a very similar standard as the rest of the league. I don't think Michael Oliver ever should have been put on this game to referee it, mainly because of what happened last year with Kovacic at the Emirates and how he didn't send him off for two borderline red card tackles, which should have been a yellow and then a second yellow. He didn't want to make a decision that affected that game last year, but then chose to make a decision to affect the game this year. It's the inconsistency that the Premier League should just be honestly embarrassed about, that it's a talking point every single weekend instead of the product that's being put out on the field. Before the sending off, according to the Foot Mob, the XG for City was about 0.77 and the XG for Arsenal was 0.61. A good chunk of Arsenal's came on those two corners from Gabriel, and a big chunk of City's came from Haaland's finish, which was about 0.3. And then the possession was about 65% the City, and the attacking stats were almost identical. I think City just had one more shot than Arsenal, but both had the same amount of big chances. It's why I think we were really going to get us an entertaining second half that was going to be relatively open and exciting, and we were robbed of it because Michael Oliver decided to send Leandro Trossard off. Arsenal held out for so long in that second half, everybody sacrificing their bodies, putting it on the line for the team, and I think every single player who was out there should be incredibly proud of their performance, regardless of them not getting the win and City eventually getting that winner with a bouncing ball in the 98th minute. And I think in years past, that would have been a real gut punch to Arsenal, and I think that would affect them long term, but I don't think that will happen with this team. Just with what they've shown the past couple years, pushing City to the limits. I mean, that's the biggest gut punch you can get, is taking it to the final day, having a chance to win the title, doing it almost everything that you can, and then still not being able to get it done. That, to me, is a much bigger gut punch than City getting a 98th minute goal to draw, where you still get a point at the Etihad, and that's still a very good point, especially this early in the season, because if Arsenal lose that game, it's, oh, they've bottled it again, the title's gone, it's City's at this point. I think knowing Arteta and just how he operates, I think this is just going to motivate this team more, and I think it's going to give them a belief and a confidence that they can still go on and win this title. I think going forward for both teams, injuries are the biggest concern. Everyone knows that City are a different team without Rodri, and that injury did not look good. You never want to see any players getting injured, even if it's from your biggest rival. You want to see the best players on the field so that you get the best product possible. For Arsenal, moving forward, it's trying to figure out the attacking solution without Martin Odegaard, who may be out until November. Is it going to be Ethan Nwaneri off the bench? Is it going to be Saka playing centrally and Sterling playing off on the right? We'll definitely find out in the coming weeks. It was a wonderful first match between the two title favorites that's making headlines for all of the wrong reasons. Moving on from City and Arsenal, I just want to quickly go through some of the other scores from this weekend. I didn't have a whole lot of time to watch games, but I did catch some glimpses of some. West Ham 0, Chelsea 3. Nicholas Jackson really showed some quality and confidence in his finishes, and I think that's huge for Chelsea. I didn't think West Ham honestly played that bad of a game, especially in the first half. I mean, Chelsea really only had those 2 chances, and they converted those 2 chances. But I thought West Ham created pretty well, and honestly were in that game, and if they had just been able to put away one of those, it would have been an entirely different second half. Aston Villa 3, Wolves 1. Villa leave it late to continue a very strong start to the season. I thought Villa were going to be in for a real long season, especially with the Champions League being in there now. But so far, they've looked very good, and like they'll be competing for the top 4 deep into the season. For Wolves, it doesn't really get any easier coming up. They've got Liverpool, and then they've got City just shortly after that. I think they need to back Gary O'Neill at least until Christmas. Let him get out of this hellish run of fixtures and hope that he can start picking up some points. Fulham 3, Newcastle 1. Former Arsenal players come up big for Fulham. Reece Nelson and Emile Smith-Rowe getting on the score sheet, and Alex Iwobi getting an assist. Leicester 1, Everton 1. Sean Dyche finally picks up a point for Everton, who I was very high on for this year, and I will regret that one until I am buried in the ground. But that seat's still getting hotter underneath him. He needs to start getting some wins. Liverpool 3, Bournemouth 0. Luis Diaz's fine form continues. Can he keep it up? I mentioned this in my preview video. I thought he needed to have a big, consistent season. That's the real big thing for me, is consistency. He's showed flashes in every season that he's been at Liverpool, but he needs to put it together for one full season. Seems, at least to the start of the season, that he is doing that. Southampton 1, Ipswich 1. That's 3 draws in a row now for Ipswich. They're out of the drop zone, and they could be a sneaky pick against Villa, especially because they're at home this upcoming week. Spurs 3, Brentford 1. Solanke gets his first goal for Spurs, which is huge, and they survived that early shocker from Mbeumo, which was just a beautifully taken goal. And a big 3 points for Ange, who's had a lot of criticism, especially since the North London derby. Crystal Palace 0, Manchester United 0. I'll be honest, I didn't get a chance to watch this game, but United's away form against the quote-unquote better teams of the Premier League, your mid-table top 10 teams, is still concerning to me. They don't seem to be able to really get any wins away from home against some tougher competition. And last but not least, Brighton 2, Nottingham Forest 2. Both teams stay unbeaten to start the season, which I think is a surprise to almost everybody. I think most people would have picked Arsenal to beat Brighton in Matchweek 3. And I think most people would have expected Forest to lose to Liverpool. So the fact that they're both here, still haven't had a loss, still sitting in mid-table, and are pushing for Europe, which is something both teams can do. They have good enough squads to be able to do that. So we'll see how the rest of the season unfolds for both of them. And that is it for me for this roundup for this past weekend in the Premier League. Again, let me know your thoughts down below, and leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe for next week's roundup, and I'll see you guys next time.